Welcome to the real, the free. It's authentically Amy, come talk with me. Love, sex, truth, no shame inside. We're getting deep, and it feels so right.
Hey sexy besties, welcome back to Authentically Amy. I'm Amy, a certified sex and relationship coach, and with me today is Tina, a divorce attorney, and we are going to be talking about Divorce Decoded. So let me tell you a little bit more about Tina. She is a trusted advocate for families across South Florida. She's been practicing law for 14 years, originally in commercial litigation, before she discovered her true calling in family law. Dedicates her practice to guiding Florida families through some of the most difficult moments, helping them find stability, resolution, and the opportunity to begin a new chapter. She's a leader in the legal community. She serves as the president of our local Inns of Court, and she's also involved in the family law section of the Florida Bar. She's a two-time recipient of the Family Law Section's Rising Star Award. So Tina, thank you so much for being here today. And I have to tell everyone how Tina and I actually met is when I was a practicing attorney. We actually had a case where we were opposing counsel. That might sound like a totally normal thing, but I assure you it's really not. A lot of times when you litigate against someone, the last thing you want to do is be friends with the person. But we got along really well, and she was obviously way more pleasant to talk to than most of the other attorneys I had to deal with. So we have maintained our friendship, and I'm just so excited to have you here to talk about decoding divorce.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Today, what we're going to talk about, there's a couple of things. I want to talk about why people get divorced, what Tina's seeing, other trends within divorced, some of the craziest stories from the front lines. Are there alternatives to like terrible years and years of litigation? What else can be done in a divorce situation? And then lastly, just touch upon some of the benefits of working with a divorce coach. The question that everyone wants to know, which is, tell us what are the most common reasons that you see that people get divorced?
Florida, we have it's a no-fault divorce state, which you need to have a reason to get divorced. You can get divorced for any reason. The number one reason I see is infidelity, especially when there's small children. Next is usually money, and then child rearing. People don't agree how to raise children. And sometimes that happens a lot in short-term relationships when people have known each other for a very short time, they get married, and then they realize, wow, I don't want to raise kids with this person.
But unfortunately, it's kind of too late because in Florida, at least, there's a presumption of 50-50 custody, right? So even if you don't want to be married to the person, you're still going to be raising your kids with them.
Yes, as of July 2023, there's a presumption of 50-50. And to get over their presumption, by preponderance of the evidence, you have to show that 50-50 would not be in the best interest, which is a pretty high burden. Like not cutting grapes for the children is not going to not get them 50-50, which I unfortunately see a lot.
Right. It's got to be something like super serious, like substance abuse,
domestic violence. Those are the big two.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure there's even cases where those things exist and it's still the court deems in the best interest of the child for both parents to be involved in the raising of the child.
Yeah, unless it's rampant in both. Like I had a case the other day, it was like over 40 overdosers. That's not going to work.
Not going to be good for a child to grow up with that. So I want to go back to the number one reason, infidelity. When you're seeing that as a reason people get divorced, is it, I guess just like tell us more about like what that looks like. Is it just like one partner finds out the other one's having an affair, they want to split up? Is it like one partner wants to split up to be with another person? Is it both? Is it all of the above?
It's all the above. Sometimes somebody reconnects with a high school sweetheart. Sometimes if there's little kids, the wife doesn't have enough time for her husband. I use that in quotes. So then he strays. Sometimes.
And it could be the other way around.
Right. It could be the other way around. I was going to say sometimes it is the other way around where the wife didn't really want children and the husband stays at home and she goes out and parties with her friends and kinds of things. Even in the later, like the older people, maybe they just want to start a new life. Your kids are now out of the house and you reconnect with someone and you don't want to stay in this marriage anymore and maybe you're only staying together for the children. Other children are out of the house.
Right. And so, I think it's important too when we talk about infidelity, like a lot of times we think of that as like the cause of the breakdown of the relationship, but really it's not the cause, it's a symptom. Because usually, like you even said, like one partner feels like their partner has abandoned them, doesn't have time for them, cares more about the kids than them, or whatever it might be. And those are like relationship issues with communication and sometimes with like professional help, working with a therapist, a coach, a counselor, right? Like those are things that can be worked on in the couple, but a lot of times people look outside the marriage instead.
Yes. The coaching would definitely help. Sometimes sometimes, even at the end of the case, that sometimes the judge will ask, is there anything the court could do for you, including counseling to save your marriage? So ideally, you want people to stay married, but sometimes it's just...
And then you also mentioned money, like financial reasons. I mean, that's interesting to me that would cause people to get divorced because I can attest personally, being single is much harder financially than being married. Like 2 incomes in this economy, it goes a lot further than 1. So that's an interesting one. Like, what does that kind of look like?
If someone is spent all their money gambling, if somebody has a gambling problem or a drinking problem, so they're spending all the money outside of the marriage, and especially if the other party is the money maker and the other one is just spending all the money, reckless shopping, mismanagement of money and investments, they just want to cut off. Or sometimes somebody is starting a new business and they know it's going to blow up. They want to get divorced before that happens so they don't have to give their spouse, or they think they don't have to give their spouse half of what's coming.
Right, so that's also interesting, right? Because if there's unequal earnings capability or, an income disparity, doesn't that usually mean that one party's gonna have to pay the other alimony anyway?
Yes, and support them through the marriage. So a lot of times I get clients that come in and say, well, I paid for everything. I paid for her school, I paid for his school, I paid for everything during the marriage. And I have to say, well, unfortunately, it means you're gonna have to continue to pay for everything through the divorce, and depending on the length of the marriage and the need for the other party, you might continue to have to pay. So a lot of times people think, oh, well, I paid for everything, I should get everything, when it's usually the opposite.
Usually, so it's so interesting, right? Like, so some of the reasons people are giving for wanting the divorce, like it doesn't even necessarily seem like the divorce will solve the problem necessarily, but which is just interesting.
Right. It's really rare that it would solve the problem, unless there's like really issues big, you cannot stay together anymore. The money issue is never going to be solved by a divorce. That's usually always makes it worse, especially if there's a lot of fighting.
What other trends are you seeing sort of in the divorce world?
I've seen an uptick of what we call gray divorces. So people in their late 60s and 70s, again, when the children are out of the house, wanting to get divorced and start a whole new chapter in their lives. That's big. Divorces can be a little bit faster because, again, there's no children involved and people are at a point in their lives where they just want to move on. So that's been a big trend I've been seeing lately.
That's interesting. That's definitely interesting. And in those cases, are you also seeing some of the other reasons like overlap, like the infidelity, the money? I guess obviously not the parenting concerns.
The infidelity, yes, and my partner's not paying attention to me. My partner was dedicated to the children, and now they have no time for me, or they don't know who they are without the children. Like, who are we as a couple now that the children are out of the house? It's like a stranger in my home. I don't know this person anymore, so I'm just going to leave. Rather than try to work it out, they just want to leave and think that the grass is always greener, which, a lot of the times. I've seen some of the dating app posts that's kind of like scary. It happens.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the grass can be greener. I guess it just really depends. I think, I think also like people have to be willing to do the work internally, whether it's with their partner or without their partner, with a new partner. But I think there's just like so much that has to be done to heal from whatever it might be. But especially if you've gone through a divorce or like a tumultuous relationship, there's so much like healing that has to happen to kind of allow you to move forward. Okay, another like juicy question. What are some of the like craziest things that you've seen?
Okay, crazy things I've seen. We could probably spend an entire show on just talking about that.
Give us a flavor.
Yeah, so I had one, it was a great divorce, and the other party cut my client's brake line on his motorcycle. But before anything could happen, she realized, she confessed, she felt really guilty, realized and told my client. And obviously we called the police.
That could have been so bad. Yeah. I mean, that could have gone from like
divorce
harmless,
to murder.
Yeah, harmless prank to like first-degree murder, because that's like premeditated.
Right.
Oh my God, that's wild.
Yeah, that was one of the wild ones. Another one was I had requested police reports in a case, and I found one with the other party calling the police asking if they could press charges against my client for cheating, infidelity, which no, you cannot.
Okay, so just so everyone knows, not a crime, can't press charges for it. There's raises ethical and moral questions, but not criminal ones.
Right. And really unfortunately, it's what people do to the children, right? People are so angry at each other, so mad at the other person, they don't see the effect it's having on their children. And I always try to say, listen, keep your children out of divorce. The children should not know the effects of your divorce. But unfortunately, a lot of people are so angry or so hurt with the other person that they'll stop at nothing to get back at them, not realizing, look what you're doing to your children. They see, especially the older ones, they can feel the vibe. People are saying now, the vibe of the parents. And that, unfortunately, affects them throughout their lives.
It does. It 100. I mean, that's such a good point. People definitely use their kids as pawns in these situations, and I think even people with good intentions. That's the thing. Like, you don't even have to be like doing it deliberately. But if you're making negative comments about your ex-spouse, even things that you think are just like innocent under your breath, if it's about the other person, like your kids are going to hear that. They're going to pick up on it. That's one thing, like, that's really important, is like also never making your kids feel like they have to choose.
Right.
You're not putting them in the middle. That, listen, my daughter tells me every freaking day how much she loves her dad, how she loves him more than me, and like he's her favorite. And I'm just like, okay, I'm so happy for you. Like, I'm so glad you love your dad that much, like I'm fine. I mean, I'm technically third because her stuffed kitty is first and daddy's only second. So I'm third, actually. But it's like, I'm not going to like make her feel bad about that. And to be fair, she's probably like possibly saying the opposite to him. You know what I mean? So like, and also she's sick. So like,
right. I was going to say, she's probably saying the same thing to your husband.
And it's not worth, I'm not going to make her feel bad. I'm just like, that's so great. I'm so glad you love your dad. Like, that's amazing. Like, I'm happy you have two parents that love you.
See, and someone doesn't have a great co-parenting relationship like you do would come back to me and say, they're alienating. She's saying something over there when she's with dad. They're saying something, look, she doesn't love me as much as he does. Not realizing he's a 6-year-old. Like, they're probably saying the same thing to get, whatever they maybe want at the time. It's not always something going on at the other person's house.
Right. And I mean, sure, there are situations where parents are manipulating their kids, but that's what we're talking about, is like a good, right? Like, it's a better way to go to not do that as much as possible, because really, like, you're not hurting the other person, you're just hurting your kids.
Right. Not to jump to the conclusions. Yes, can something be going on in another house? Maybe, possibly. But should that be your first reaction? No. Just like if you were living together, not divorced, you would be able to go and be like, why is she saying that? Or did you hear her say that? Now that you're divorced, it's still not the first thing that's going on is something terrible is going on. Just realize the situation. Like, figure out what's going on. Doesn't necessarily mean it's something bad going on at your ex-spouse's house.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of people in divorce situations like put their kids in the middle when it comes to like money stuff sometimes too. It's like, because if you have an agreement to split finances, the kid asks for, it's like, oh, go ask your dad, or oh, go ask your mom, or no, I'm not going to do that because your dad's not going to pay, but like, who is that hurting? That's not hurting your ex-spouse.
Right.
It's hurting the kid. And they shouldn't have to like ask two parents for something that they need or want either. So I think that's a great point, is like people really need to prioritize like their children's well-being. Above like trying to get revenge. Right. But it's just unfortunate that divorce obviously tends to bring out like some really ugly sides of people.
100%.
What are some ways like you have that people can like, I don't know, avoid like fanning those, like bring the tensions down, right? Like, are there things you tell your clients to kind of like get them to not get to that heated level, like kind of bring the tension down a little?
Well, I let them first vent and then back up and say, could it be other things? It really helps, shameless plug here, if there's a divorce coach involved or some sort of therapist involved, so I can say, listen, you talk this out with them and let's see what's really going on here. Because sometimes people want me to immediately file a motion, do this, do that. And I'm like, how am I going to prove that your 6-year-old is going, that he's doing something to, for her to say you're her favorite? What are we going to do there? Let's try this. This might not be a court thing. This is, I'm getting charged. You're getting charged for me having to file a motion, go to court to do what? So it is very helpful, again, shameless plug, when there's a divorce coach, because then I could say, listen, why don't you, go talk to Amy. Let's regroup in a week. Because sometimes it's reactionary. They call it right away. She just said this to me. Okay, not a huge deal. Like,
right.
let's back up, take a breath, and let's try to figure this out in a adversarial manner, because we don't need to do this. It's not like you're going to bring your 6-year-old to testify. It's not going to happen. Just let's try to figure it out. Hopefully they have a divorce coach to help figure it out with them.
Yeah, or some other like trusted professional. Yeah, because I agree with you. It does seem like in family law that, people, once they're in the divorce process, and especially once it gets heated, it's kind of like every little thing, they just want to call their lawyer and be like, blah, 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 whatever it is. And sometimes those are valid, right? Sometimes you're going to get valid calls, like, where one party or another is like not doing the right thing, not exercising their time sharing, not showing up on time, right? Like, there's valid things. But I think there's so much that can just be avoided if people would just like be able to have civil conversations with one another. So, speaking of this and like bringing the tensions down, things of that nature. Like what, obviously we've been talking a lot about like the knockdown, drag out, big time fight, litigation, divorce that goes on a long time. And certainly we know like that's a lot of what happens. Also, before we even get to this, that is a good question. How long does the average divorce take?
I'm going to do the lawyer's response. It depends. So ideally, you file, the person gets served, they have 20 days to respond, you exchange what's called mandatory disclosures, which is like all your financial documents, within 45 days, and then we go to mediation and it could be resolved then. That would be the quickest. Those can get done like, 3-4 months, if everyone turns in their mandatory disclosures on time and they're willing to work together. When there's knockdown, drag out fights, when you're fighting over every little thing, when he's not cutting the grapes and you want him to cut the grapes and she's not paying for soccer and we have to go to court, we have to get a guardian ad litem involved or, a mental health professional, there's so many things. Like I have a case that's been going on for 4 years and they've been married under 4 years. And sometimes, unfortunately, in divorce, it can go on forever because they get divorced. We have a final judgment. We have a marital settlement agreement, a parenting plan. But then a year or so, sometimes a couple months, they come back. They want to modify this. He's not doing this. She's not doing this. And sometimes I have forever clients. So just forever coming back to me, which, business-wise, for me, found phenomenal. But for them personally and their children, not so great. Like if they had just been able to communicate together or have an effective co-parenting agreement, you don't want to be in court all the time. You don't want someone making decisions for you. You should be able to make decisions for yourselves and what's best for your family and your children. But unfortunately, sometimes
sometimes it could be like 18 years, like till the kids, probably even after.
Sometimes after, because
like even when the kids are in college,
support, right?
And as an adult, that's wild. So there's no right. So it can be a quick process if things are agreed upon, but it can also take a long time. And one thing you didn't even mention is like sometimes after the final judgment, it can go to appeal.
Right.
And an appeal, at least in the state of Florida, like good luck getting that resolved in under a year.
Yeah.
Because you get almost 100 days just to file the initial brief, and then you can get up to 90 days automatic extension. Mm-hmm. I've obviously done a lot of appeals, including family law appeals. True story. Right, and then like the other party can get so it could take like 6 months just for the briefs to get done, and then you have no idea when the court's going to even review it. So that can add a whole nother year to the process if people are really willing to fight over every little thing that's happening.
Right, and when there's kids involved in that, sometimes that's really bad because if one parent is withholding and other parents see the child and there's no temporary time-sharing plan, there's no parenting plan in place, or there was, then it's appealed, so it's not forcible or whatever, then that child is continuing to be separated from the parent for all that time. So, it could take a long time. People spend their life savings on divorce, which is very unfortunate. Sometimes people spend their children's college funds on divorce. Why? There should be no reason why we can't just sit and try to resolve your claims, because if who's resolving them? The judge. The judge doesn't know you, doesn't know your family. They know you for 8 hours, 16 if you have the 2-day trial, and then they make the decision. And then, like you said, if it's appealed, whatever happens on appeal, we might have to come down, have the trial all over again. It's crazy. And it's very financially invasive. You have to give up your bank accounts, your credit cards, everything. Think about everything you spend on every day. Sometimes I do that. I'm like, man, if I'm divorced, like you did your divorce amicably. So maybe you didn't go through that. But a lot of people, I have to go through their bank statements. What did you spend your money on? And can you imagine? People,
You better watch out all those times you went to the strip club.
Right. Or order McDonald's. I had a guy was going to McDonald's every 2 days.
It was Ashley Mass. What was that website?
Yes, Ashley
people
Mass.
cheating on their spouses. Yeah,
Yes.
you got the receipts for that. You got your OkCupid,
Pornhub.
Tinder. You got your Tinder and your Grindr apps on there. Yeah, you got to be careful. That's all coming out.
That's happened too. Where you're just like, Pornhub or dude, Tinder,
OnlyFans.
Right, OnlyFans. Yeah.
Let me tell you, that is something you probably just don't want in your life.
I talk about OnlyFans
for a judge to be looking at your payments to various adult sites.
And trying to explain to a judge how you make money on OnlyFans as one of the parents is also fun.
That needed to be in the craziest stories. Hold on. We need to go. We still have more to talk about with divorce, but we need to go back to that because that is actually amazing. Because look, in my line of work, like sex work is work. We, we stand by it. That's fascinating, right? Because how does something like that play a role?
Because you have to provide your pay stubs, W-2s, bank accounts, and trying to explain to the judge what you're doing in a non-conventional job like that, especially with some of the older judges, is just, I mean, I very, positive support sex work and everything like that, but not everybody does. So
Right.
it's hard. And it's sometimes the other person will want to use that specifically against the parent, especially when there's young kids.
Of course.
And trying to unravel the norms or, which is hard. It's difficult.
Right, it is hard because like you said, not everyone agrees that that's okay, and so they might say like, oh, it's not an environment for a kid, blah, 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 but what you do for a living doesn't necessarily pertain to how you are as a parent. All right, so going back to the divorce, just, really quickly, I think we were talking about like there's, we know there's like the big litigation, drag out, fight, like other things people can do to get divorced that don't have to last for 10 years or 18 years or even 2 years. Like, are there other ways people can do this to lower the amount of like misery that it's going to cause them?
Yes, there's a number of different things. You can come to an agreement between yourselves of how you're going to separate your properties and how you're going to deal with your children. And you can there's forms online. The Florida Supreme Court has a bunch of forms online with instructions for basically do-it-yourself divorce. I always recommend having at least an attorney look over your things, especially if you're not comfortable with finances and what you have. I always say, always read what you sign. I mean, you are presumed to know what you have signed. So it's not going to be a defense in saying, well, I didn't sign it, I didn't read it. Doesn't matter. You signed it, you read it. That's one going.
Even if you didn't understand what you read, then
Right.
You're not supposed to sign it.
Yeah, you're presumed. Even if you don't understand English or you can't read English and you sign it, doesn't matter.
You have to ask for a translator ahead of time, right?
Right, 100%. You can go to mediation. So there's a lot of mediators that do mediations and then prepare your documents for you. And then you can hire an attorney to file them for you. You can file them themselves. Or a big one is collaborative divorce. Right, so collaborative divorce, it's not really known. It's more like a team-based resolution to your issues. So each of the spouses, each of the parties will retain a collaboratively trained attorney. You split the cost for a mental health professional and a forensic accountant. The mental health professional is the one that runs the meetings, and the forensic accountant is the one that gathers your financials. So like your financials from each spouse and comes up with an equitable distribution chart, if there's children, child support, if there's alimony and alimony schedule. And rather than having all your business out in court in the public, because in Florida we know you practice under the sunshine, everything is public. You go into these confidential meetings. You can take 1, 2, 3 meetings. And at the end, you file in court, but just it's a different kind of filing. It's like a joint filing, and you go before the final hearing. The judge signs off on your final judgment, and you're done. That is a very team-based way to do it. And I know a lot of judges, if people come in to do a collaborative divorce, because they do this, the judge has to sign off on the divorce decree and everything, they will make an extra speech for everybody at the hearing, congratulating the parties and saying, I'm so happy you did this, because judges, because it's your family, right? Why are you dragging your family through the court? Why is somebody else making a decision for you and your family? You should be making it. And the collaborative process allows you to have, I call it sometimes a glorified mediations, because it's confidential, but it's a little meetings throughout, and then team building and like team settling how to resolve it. I wish it was more popular. It's really not. And I wish, famous plug for that as well.
Yeah, and I would think that like people who go through that, it's probably has a better outcome for like co-parenting well and other like things where you need cooperation. Like it probably just, you're not like, there's probably less resentment between the parties because they just kind of like are able to resolve it together.
Right, 100%. And some people get scared because they say, oh, I have to hire an attorney and I have to pay for half of a mental health professional and half of a forensic. Ultimately, all the fees in a collaborative divorce, nothing compared to a contentious divorce.
Right.
You will pay triple, double. And I think the statistic is like 99 or 98% of all collaborative cases end up resolving, because it's that great of a process. And if it doesn't, if something happens in a collaborative process and you have to, there's nothing stopping you from going to court. Now, the two attorneys that are representing the parties in the collaborative can't be your attorneys in court because of all the information that you've learned, but there's nothing stopping you from going to court if the collaborative process doesn't work. So I've had only a really couple collaborative cases, and I wish I had more, just because I think it's the way to go. You're making the decisions, not the court.
Yeah. And then I think you mentioned it, but people can work together, and if they agree on stuff, they can just file the documents or hire like a lawyer to help them with the documents. That's how we did it. We're both attorneys, so I think that was an easier path, but it was a very low conflict situation because we just kind of we both knew that if we're as attorneys, we both knew if we were fighting, we were just going to end up paying lawyers a lot of money. So we were like, let's just figure out something we both can live with, fill out the paperwork, submit it, but it really does make it like so much more low conflict for co-parenting, because you don't have all that like animosity and fighting, like all that like anger that gets bottled up in the divorce process. Like you just don't have. And so I think
you can do it where it's because you're attorneys, so you knew the process of filing. So sometimes people are hesitant because like, well, what are we going to do? Like if you come into agreement and you fill out the forms, like again, on the Florida Supreme Court, they have all the family law forms. You can just hire an attorney to file them and do the final hearing.
Right,
which is
and to review it.
Yeah, with a very short amount. But some people that do it themselves will file a divorce and it just sits there, right? Because they don't realize like, hey, the judge isn't like has thousands of cases. They're not looking at your case and saying, I need to set Mr. and Mrs. Smith for final hearing. No, it just sits there. So there's a lot cheaper ways to do it, getting along. I mean, again, sometimes you can't. Sometimes if there's gross domestic abuse, heavy substance abuse, you just can't. But if there isn't those things, just look out. Think of your children. Think of when it was when you first got together. Why did you get together? Why did you marry this person in the first place? Why did you have children with them? At one point, you guys got along. You guys, worked for the benefit, made each other happy. Obviously, had children together. And it just, again, I can't stress enough how much it is to just try to resolve it amongst yourselves, collaboratively, or like you did, Amy, and get it done, because it's just better for the family dynamic overall.
Okay, so I have another like kind of juicy question, which is like, I know we were talking about a lot of marriages end because of infidelity. Obviously, as a sex and relationship coach, I'm very interested in that aspect of things. So I've seen it both ways, where there's couples who like have no sex, and that's why like the relation, I wouldn't say that's why the relationship fails. I would say that's a symptom, again, of like other issues in the relationship, because unless the couple started that way, at some point they had a good sex life, right? And usually it deteriorates. And I don't think it just deteriorates by some magical force. It's usually like something's deteriorating within the bond in the relationship. But I've also seen it where couples like actually like have a good sex life, or they like keep having sex even after they get divorced, or like they're still divorced, but it's interesting. Like, have you seen, which of those dynamics, I guess, have you seen more with your clients? Have you seen both?
I've seen mostly they're not getting along. Something is going on in the relationship. Either they bought a new house and they're fixing it up, or it's the children, and one person is not getting what they need from the other person, so they're stepping out on them. That's the one I see the most. Or like we mentioned before, the gray divorces where they were really just together for their children, and now that the children are out, it's a stranger in their homes. They haven't had that sex life in a while. I haven't seen they're still having sex with other people thing. That one is rare. I've had a couple where it's just like, look at this person. But mostly it's the person is not getting what they need from the other person, so they don't even want to. They don't even want to have sex they want to go outside the marriage because they're so put off, or the children thing is another, where one is very focused on their children, so they're tired and they don't really want to deal with it. Or some people are just very unhappy within the marriage, and rather than addressing it, kind of just ignoring, moving on, children are out of the house, all right, I'm out, rather than trying to work within the marriage.
That makes sense. So I know you mentioned it earlier, and obviously thank you for the shout out. Want to talk a little bit about how a divorce coach can be beneficial, not just for the person or the people in the divorce, but also, how it can help the divorce process move along. So what has your experience been with clients who also work with a divorce coach?
I love when my clients have divorce coach. Love it. Because a lot of times it will streamline the process, and I'm not having to handhold, or if something happens, they call me and want to complain about what's going on. That's nothing with their case legally, nothing I can really do, just call to kind of want to talk to me, which is great. I'll talk to you, but I also have to remind them, like, I'm an expensive person to talk to. I don't charge nearly the divorce coach, I believe, doesn't charge nearly as much as I do an hour. So if I could say, hey, listen, this might be an issue for you to talk to Amy about, or, that helps a lot, because it helps streamline not only the case, but like their invoice. So they're not, because sometimes I have clients complain, I'm spending so much money, and I have to be like, when we review the invoice, like we talked in this day for 2 hours. Unless we're preparing for a hearing, trial, mediation, there's absolutely no reason why you need to talk to me for 2 hours, right? Like you can talk to anyone else, but especially the divorce coach, because they also, I find, help them through the process. The fact that you're an attorney before, I think would be immensely helpful, because then you can also understand, because sometimes I have to re-explain something about like 5 times, and just saying, listen, and I'll do it. I'll talk to you as much as you want. But again, expensive person to talk to. Like, and I'm not trained. I'm not a therapist. I'm a counselor, but I'm counseling you in your case, in your divorce, how we're going to move it forward. I'm not trying to counsel you with, he's just, he's refusing to look at me, and now he's dating a 22-year-old when you're in your 60s. Like, I can't help you with that. That's unfortunate. I'm not there for you. I'm there to help you through your divorce process. If you have questions about your your emotions and everything, but emotionally, I'm not the one, unfortunately.
Right. And I hear this a lot. So I hear this a lot from divorce attorneys is like, right. So as attorneys in general, I will say like, it is funny because another name for an attorney, a lawyer, counselor, right? But when they say counselor, it's not like counselor, like counseling, but we attorneys do so much counseling of their clients. Like I had the same, that I would say family attorneys, probate attorneys, and like trust and estates attorneys say that all the time. They're like, I spend just as much time, like literally just listening to my client talk about their issues and their problems and just like venting. And they're like, I'm happy to do it. I have to charge, right? Because like your time is valuable and that's how lawyers make money is by charging for their time. And, you know, they're happy to do it, but they're like, this is a constant refrain. So, you know, like Tina said, the benefits of a divorce coach is that it's someone who is a little less expensive, but that can actually help you like both understand, well, not all divorce coaches, but I'll say someone who is a lawyer, not practicing lawyer, but a former lawyer and a divorce coach, right? Like who's also trained in sex and relationship coaching can help you both on the emotional aspects of what you're going through and break down the legal stuff. Cause it is, listen, if you're not a lawyer, it can be so confusing. You're like, wait, why can't I do this? What is this motion, right? But again, talking to you, a lawyer rate is going to cost money. So like just for frame of reference, when I was an attorney, my last hourly rate was something like $650 an hour. My rate as a coach is not nearly that much. If you go on my website, it's all public info. You know, you can find out how much I charge. And of course, I like am always willing to work with clients. So it's a very different pay scale. So yeah, I think that it's a valuable thing for people to consider for sure. And
to the emotions, it's like, because you said before, divorce brings out the worst in people. It gets worse when you're losing, you know, when you think you're losing your house and your children and everything. So there is a huge emotional toll. It's a big emotional process that you're going through. And sometimes it's the biggest thing in someone's life, right? If someone has not gone through, you know, lots of traumas, and sometimes divorce is the biggest trauma I've heard. And I, as an attorney, am just not equipped to deal with, unfortunately, your emotions. I can help you and talk to you in a way, but I'm not licensed in that way. I'd have no training. I can only help you in my field legally. So sometimes I'm like, I don't know what you want me to say. Like I think, and I've referred many clients to either therapy or divorce coach because I'm just like, I'm not the one you should be discussing this with. And sometimes it's unfortunate because sometimes someone's been isolated in their marriage, right? So they haven't been allowed to go outside the house or have friends, or they've lost their identity within the children. So now they're like, who am I going to talk to? And it's great, you know, you feel like you can talk to me. And I, again, like you said, I will talk to you. I just want to make sure they have the best help. And I'm just not the best help to help you emotionally. I'm there for you legally, and a divorce coach really helps with the emotional part of it.
Absolutely. And even, you know what, like so many people who maybe stepped back from their careers, like you said, like they don't know their identity anymore. I think that's so common. Like people who have stepped back from their careers when they're married to take care of the kids. And right, like that's another thing that someone who's a coach, a life coach, a career coach, like these are people, professionals that can help you get all of that. And again, it sounds so expensive when you're like, I don't want to hire a lawyer and a coach and a this and a that. But when you step back and you look at the numbers, ultimately it's less expensive than trying to rely on just one person. And again, like you're going out and reinventing yourself, like it's worth all the money in the world if you're going to get those results. So I agree. I think it's a useful thing in general. I think more people should do it. So
I wish more people did. I really did.
So we've obviously talked a lot about like divorce coaching, and when people are like already in the divorce, like they're in it, I guess, to win it or lose it, whatever you want to say about that. But are there people that come to you like kind of before they've even talked to their spouse about getting divorced, right? Like they're just like, it's like a whisper. They're like, I'm thinking about divorce. And like in those situations, like, you know, I don't know, like what are they like coming to you? What are the concerns? What are the thoughts? Like, and yeah, tell me more about those situations.
Okay, so we at my firm offer free consultations. So a lot of times I'll get those calls like, hey, I just want to know what my rights are. I just want to know, you know, what the process is like. And I usually start off after my whole spiel is say, have you talked to your spouse about this? Have you guys talked about this? And sometimes they'll say, no, they have no idea. Again, if there's no domestic violence, I'm assuming there's no domestic violence, there's no serious cause for concern. Someone is calling because they're unhappy within the marriage. So I explain, obviously, their rights, and sometimes we'll say, you know, have you talked to this person? Have you gone to couples counseling? Have you gone to therapy? Just because on that situation, like divorce is not going to fix it all the time. You know, like if it's, and you haven't even talked to the other person, you know, especially if they're unhappy with their sex life, like what's the divorce going to do? You know, you're just going to be very unhappy with more than just your lack of sex life. Or had you just, gone to a therapist or spoken to your spouse, maybe that could change. So a lot of times if they're indecisive, I always ask, have you gone to counseling? Have you spoken to the spouse? And a lot of times it's a no. And sometimes I don't hear from those people again because they've either talked to the spouse or gone to a therapist. And sometimes people will just want to say, well, I just want to have you on retainer just in case, like happy to take your money. But that's not what I'm there for. I shouldn't be there just in case. I should be there when you're ready to get divorced. You should go to someone like you, Amy, when they're thinking about it or on the cusp of it. Because, you're married. You got married for a reason. It shouldn't just cut and run. You should be able to try to do anything to save it. And then if it's really unsalvageable and you're really that unhappy after you've done everything, then come to me, I'll take your money and I'll help you out.
Right. And that's the thing. And right, like I think even like before the infidelity, right, if there's like things, if you feel like you're, one of the most common things that people come to sex and relationship coaches for is what we call like uneven desire, right? Like one partner feels like they want to have more sex. One partner feels like maybe they're having enough sex. They want to have less sex. Like the parties want the amount of sex differently. And usually one party wants more of it, or sometimes even both parties, but they literally have never had the skills to communicate with one another. That's like the bread and butter of sex coaching, right? Is like trying to help couples to deal with that issue and to have more sex and intimacy and connection. So, right, it's sort of like if you're in that stage where you're thinking about it because maybe the sex life isn't what you want. Maybe, you don't feel like your partner and you have good communication. You're not having, like, those are things that can be worked on. And I think to your point, you can try to work on that. Listen, hiring a sex and relationship coach or a therapist is going to be a lot cheaper than getting a divorce. Like people don't want to spend the money, but it is, if it fixes the problem, it's definitely going to save you money in the long run. So it's worth the investment. But again, if it doesn't work, then you go to Tina. Right. Then you go through with the process. But it's something you can certainly try. It might give you another option. It might not. It's not going to always work for everyone. Sometimes things, like you said, sometimes things are past the point.
Of no return.
Of no return, and sometimes it's just a misunderstanding.
Reminds me of sometimes when people don't talk. You know that song, Do You Like Pina Coladas?
Yeah.
So the song, it says like someone puts an ad and like the wife or the spouse answers the ad and it's like, I didn't know you like pina coladas and what is it, like making love in the rain? Like had they just spoken to each other or gone to a therapist, they would have found out, wow, we both want these things. Right. We're just not communicating. It's like communicating is key. So that just popped in my head when we were talking.
No, I love that song. If you like pina coladas. It's a great one. Yeah. So, okay, on that note, before we all go drink some pina coladas, because I know everyone is like, now I need a pina colada. If you wanted our viewers to take away like one thing, it was like the number one thing you want to make sure that they leave with today. With the people with kids, keep your children out of your divorce, 100%. And if it's not something that is dire, something that you, like, again, I would say dire substance abuse, domestic violence, see a therapist, try couples. I mean, there's been leaps and bounds, that benefits people get from therapy, all kinds of therapy. Just don't give up, again, with the caveat. Don't give up unless you've tried everything. Because the worst thing is that you didn't give it your all. If you get divorced and you have to go through the messy process, you don't look back and say, should I have done that? Should I have tried a little bit more? And if it's done, it's done. But a divorce shouldn't be number one. It shouldn't be your go-to. I think you should try to fight for your marriage, and if the other person's not fighting with you and you see that, fine. But I don't think the divorce should be the answer. Sometimes people automatically say, all right, we're getting divorced. That shouldn't be the answer. Yeah, and if it is, it is. If it is the answer for you, make sure you have all the right professionals, the right legal representation. Someone, people are always saying like, oh, I want a bulldog lawyer. That's not what you want. You want someone like, I'm sure that Tina is a bulldog also, but you want someone you can have a conversation with and who you're going to feel heard and validated when you're speaking to and you feel comfortable with. So find a lawyer that you feel like you connect with, just like you would with any other professional. Work with a divorce coach if you think that would be helpful. And truly, like you said, I think people can benefit from therapy solo while you're going through a divorce, especially if you have past trauma that needs to be unpacked. 100%. These are all important things. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you all for listening. And if you liked this, please make sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all the things. And we'll see you soon, sexy besties.